I met her in a church on a Sunday evening, not late on a Saturday night.
Hi, welcome to Music is the Drug, Cowboy Junkies podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Stitcher, Podchaser, TuneIn, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to make sure you get every episode. I'm Dave Bowler, and I wrote the book Music is the Drug, the authorised biography of Cowboy Junkies, which came out last year. Over the course of the next few weeks, with the help of Michael Timmins and Alan Anton, we'll be looking at songs from right across the Junkies repertoire, from White Off Earth Now all the way through to Ghosts. We're going to break with protocol today and talk about two songs, both from the same period and in a similar musical style, Slow Sad Waltzes. We'll go on to Winter's song from Black Eyed Man shortly, but first, a song that missed out on that album. I could tell you which one and what it's about, but instead, I'll leave that to Margot Timmins.
This next song is based on a true story. The story is about a man and a woman named Joseph and Lillian Fury, and they were a couple that lived during the Depression, and they fell in love and got married, and they moved into a 5-room apartment. And in this 5 rooms, they spent their entire married lives together. They had their children there and raised them and sent them on their way. And they grew old in this apartment. And eventually, Lillian died of old age and left Joseph alone. And in his loneliness, he began to paste small objects onto the walls of this apartment he shared with his wife. He took things like lima beans and macaroni and buttons and anything really. He would cut out hearts and stars and he pasted them to the walls. And eventually over the years, he did the entire 5 rooms, all the walls and all the ceilings, even the kitchen cupboards. And when it was discovered that he'd done this thing, of course, they asked him why. And he said, because I missed her. So we wrote a song about Joseph's love for his wife Lillian, and this is it. It's called 5-Room Love Story.
By the time we reached the early 1990s, CD had become the main music carrier of the time, and the extended capacity meant that artists would cram every song they had to hand onto their latest album. As a result, many albums got a little bit too leggy.
Yeah, I agree. Ours did as well. Like certainly a song or two. We still maintain from our point of view, we still maintain the idea of keeping it cohesive and keeping it as far as the theme goes. But we might have, let that be a little bit more bloated. We now think more in terms of the vinyl and try and keep it a shorter statement because it's more relevant. But certainly, Black Eyed Man was the first album. Well, it did come out on vinyl, but it wasn't relevant like it was a CD you were thinking about. And it was a drag because, we'd grown up with a side and a B side, and it was a lot easier to tell the story if you had the break, the side break. So yeah, you sort of allowed things to meander a little bit. I don't know. And I know like when we came to finally do vinyls of Black Eyed Man and Pale Sun, we had to do them as double albums because they're a bit too long for traditional vinyl. So we got caught up in that a bit too. But we still wanted to maintain the cohesiveness of the songs and how they related to each other.
As Alan points out, as music fans, the passing of vinyl in the 1990s did create fresh problems for the Junkies as they set out to make an album.
Yeah, well, we grew up in, the album era, and that was really important to us. And, what we hated about CDs is that you lost the side A and side B thing. And that was always, crucial. And when you're listening to a record, would I want to play side A or side B? And you know that the band obviously thought about it because it works as a side as well as a whole record. So, that has always been a huge thing for us. And we spend a lot of time figuring out sequencing and all that. And yeah, the length of an album is in our minds, no more than 45 minutes because that's what an album was, So the idea of putting out a 60-minute record really doesn't make sense to us. Unless we had, that's almost double album. So if we're going to do that, we'd probably do a few more to make it, conceptually work. But yeah, that's the way we think.
Making each record a cohesive statement does mean that good songs can fall by the wayside, even if only temporarily, simply because they don't quite fit a particular project.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been very, very big on the album being a statement, right? It's a whether it be sonic or lyrical, usually a combination of the two. And then and then of course the sequencing. So it's always a big part. To us, an album, the 10, 11, 12 songs on a record are very important to each other, and they all hook together somehow, and thematically, lyrically, and sonically. So that was written outside of those songs, or I can't say that. It probably was written at the same time, but it just wasn't written for that record. Black Eyed Man was really and it could have fit. When I look back now, it could certainly have fit, and I don't remember excluding it. I don't remember thinking, okay, well, we're not even going to consider this. It might have been considered for it. I don't remember, but Black Eyed Man was really about me meeting my wife and Patty, and our courtship, and sort of that's sort of that album really is about that. That's generally speaking, that's sort of what it is. That's those songs. So that almost 5 Year Love Story is too far along, too far along in the relationship. And it didn't make sense at the time for me to include it in those other songs. That song was really, again, a narrative song. Still, I was still writing narrative songs, and going into Black Eyed Man, it was like that album it's basically all narratives, I think. And really getting into that idea. And that song is actually inspired by a true story. That was a simple song to write because it was, somebody gave me, I think my wife might have given it to me, an article on this couple who basically, it's the story of 5 Room Love Story. They lived in a 5-room apartment in Brooklyn and all their lives, and she died, and he went about decorating the entire apartment in this amazing artwork and this collages and using cutout pieces and found pieces of whatever he could, and sort of decorated the whole thing. And finally, I think when he died, they discovered this apartment of completely, and then now they turn it into a museum. Like it's a primitive art museum. Is that the right word? Primitive art. Anyways, so I just thought it was it's a love story. It's a beautiful love story. So I wrote the song about it. It's really straightforward. It's a waltz, and it's just, people tend to love it. I find it a little bit because it's so straight. It's not one of my favorite songs, but people really do love that song, and so it falls in and out of our repertoire. It's not really in it right now, but it's again, it was an exercise. Somebody gave me the article, and I thought, okay, well, I'll write a song using this.
Every time you said I love you, and paint a star for every secret that we shared. You dried lime boots and small plastic birds. Because you cared. She says it's cold where you brought me. He says, darling, don't you worry. You can stay in my arms until the springtime comes. But let the snow drift.
Winter Song, I mean, you're saying about Black Eyed Man being a narrative thing. That one is a little bit more impressionistic, I think.
Yeah, it's not really a short story, but it is. It's sort of a moment of a short story, I guess. Again, I was saying that that record is really about meeting my wife, meeting Patty, and falling in love and getting married, and her moving up here to Canada. She was from Virginia, or is from Virginia, so that really, that's a very relative to that theme. That's really about. The opening line, it's cold, it's cold where you brought me. That's sort of, she still says that, it's still relevant to me. So that's really about, that's sort of like the emotional side of of the story. Like when I think in terms of narrative, I think of the whole album, right? So there might be a little surreal asides, like our like Winter Song, which are not necessarily narrative driven, story driven, but are the emotional heart of the stories.
You were talking earlier about the sort of the core four, the four of you making your sound, and then you can decorate it with all these other bits and pieces. And the dance between the fiddle and the accordion and the mandolin is a big part of Winter Song, and I suppose it was a signature at that point.
With that record, we kind of broke up, so to speak, the band as far as the Trinity band was. Like we'd done Trinity Session and Cautionars with that band and done a lot of touring. We did all the Cautionars and touring with them, and then we decided for Black Eyed Man to invite in. That was our first real true studio album. Like that record is all tons of overdubs, lots of different musicians, and we recorded the core four as a unit, but then with the idea of leaving space and bringing in people to add stuff. And we didn't abandon the instrumentation, but we abandoned some of the players. I think the only one on that, I guess, the Arrow's on there and Jeff Bird's on there a little bit. But we still wanted to maintain some of the traditional instrumentation, like mandolin and accordion. Not as much. But that song for sure, that was we wanted to get the fiddle and the accordion, the mandolin. That sort of was that's really a harkening back to a Cautionars style of song, as far as the arrangement's concerned.
In the same way that you'd moved on from the one microphone recording, I guess it was time to move on from those signature sounds to do something else.
Yeah, and then so we brought, there was a lot of experimenting on that record as far as instrumentation goes. There's a lot. I brought in a lot of different guitar players. I wanted to get away from my sound of playing, which I did for a few years, actually, for a few records. I got a little, sick of myself. Maintaining my rhythm playing, which is a big part of the band, and but I got a lot of different lead players in on it for that record, different styles, and as they say, there's mandolin. I think there's like 20 musicians on that record. It's a ton of musicians, so it was fun. It was really fun. We had the budget to do it and the time to do it, and was sitting in a studio. It was the first time we'd really done that, even though, Cautionars was recorded in a studio. It was done very quickly as far as our time in the studio is concerned. And we didn't really use the multi-tracking side of the studio when we recorded Cautionars. So, but with Black Eyed Man, we really did. And we did that. We did the record sort of 3-4 songs at a time. We, again, come off the road. We have new songs. We'd go into the studio, work on them, then go away and come back and work on another 3 or 4. And so it was really much longer process, and it was very right from the start. The idea was to try and really add more instrumentation, different types of instrumentation. Some trombone on there, some horns, and it was fun. It was a really fun record to make.
That's the end for this week, but we'll be back to look at another song next time. Before then, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. You can also like it, add reviews, and tell your friends that we're here. Thanks for all the ratings and reviews that you've left so far. They really do help to spread the word. To keep up with the band and to pre-order their new album, Songs of the Recollection, head for cowboyjunkies.com. If you're a Spotify user, you can also follow our growing playlist. The details are in the show notes. We'll be back next week. See you then.